Hey there, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to go over some comic book collection organizational tips, and I want to share some of the things with you, some of the tools and some of the mistakes and errors that I make in terms of organizing your collection and keeping track of your comics online. Right now on my screen, you'll see my personal collection. This is my sort of master list under GoCollect. And what you'll notice right here, this warning, too many comics. And I want to explain what that is and what I'm dealing with, and hopefully through the mistake that I made in using GoCollect, you can kind of start fresh with your GoCollect lists and so on. So a list in GoCollect is essentially just a category or a label, if you will, that helps, put comic books into specific lists, specific bins. Depending on what you're doing, it could be something where you have books set aside that are keys, books that are getting graded, they're in progress with CGC or CBCS. It could be favorite cover artist. Whatever list you want to create, GoCollect allows you to create that custom list. When I started with GoCollect, I essentially had a PC list, a personal collection, and that really grew out of control. As you can see on my screen, I have currently over 2,000 books in the list called My Personal Collection. And so whenever I would purchase a book, I would grade it and I would put it under this personal collection as sort of a catch-all list. Now, what happened was with GoCollect, I soon realized that they're not able to actually display all of those books within a list if it contains more than 500 comics. So that's why you see that warning on my screen right now where it says there's too many books to display. And I also realized that this was a problem because I use the value report, where if you click on that, you can see all of the comics within that list in a singular view, where you can also see their fair market value. So if I click on the value report, you'll see what I'm talking about here. But this I'm running against the personal collection. And so it can only display so many issues, and then it just stops. And what I was doing is I was using this list to figure out which books I should send in next for grading, because I would export this list, I would sort by fair market value, maybe do a calculation based on what I've paid and look at my margin. And if everything kind of lined up at that point, then I would pick that book and send it off for grading. But what was happening is this was only a small percentage. I believe it caps at either 500 or even less on the value report when you're exporting these books. So the bulk of my collection just was not being represented on that export. So when you're starting out with GoCollect, you have to keep this in mind. How do you want to organize your lists? And the one way to do it is to map your lists to your actual bins. And that's what I started to do. So you can see on the right-hand side under my lists, I now have a PC designation. And so these are books for the PC. And then I have them organized first by publisher or range of publishers. And then as we get down here into Marvel, you can see that I've got them sorted by title. And you can even see a couple of bins here behind me where I have a Postit note on outside of the BCW hard plastic bin. And I have that mapped. So right here, I've got PC Marvel, starting with A through Amazing Fantasy. So every book that I have in this bin, either digitally through GoCollect or physically, they're all in there together. And then I can run a value report, and I know that everything that is in that bin is represented here in that value report. And so how do I use this? Well, like I said, I can use this list to figure out are there books in this bin that are worth sending off to CGC. And so right here at the top, A-Force number 1, I have it personally screened at a 9.4, and a CGC Universal Fair Market Value is currently $85. I do sometimes put in what I've paid for the book. That helps me later on. So you can see that I paid $8.50 for this book. at the time of purchase. So when you factor in the cost of grading, it might be worthwhile to go ahead and slab this book and sell it based on the data that's in GoCollect. Other cases, the paid doesn't really matter so much. It's really more about the fair market value. But again, your data is your own, depends on how you want to use it. But this is how you can take advantage of these lists. This value report is super, super important. And so you want to be able to leverage that. So when you're creating these lists, you want to make sure that your list is never going to grow over 500, because then you're going to start to miss out with what's in the list. And again, the way that I organize it is mapping the bins that I have in my personal collection to the GoCollect lists. And a lot of times I do kind of funny stuff, like I'm looking at a bin and there's barely enough comics where there's just a little bit of breathing room. I try not to pack the books in the bin, because then they do start to press against one another. But in those cases where I have 3 or 4 books to add to the bin and the bin is too full, I then kind of sit down with the bin and look at the grades, and I start to pull out a few books and decide, should I sell these on eBay? Should I send them off for grading? But in any case, I want to figure out, is there a reason or a way to actually remove books from the bin so that I don't have to keep buying more comic book short boxes and bins and so forth to store the books? So that's where it makes sense to me to move some of these into GoCollect specific lists that correspond to a bin, because oftentimes a bin that I have or a short box that I have will become full and I don't know what to do about it. And it's okay to work on that one short box at a time, or that one bin at a time, instead of by title. So you might say, I would prefer to have a list by title or by character. So you may have a GoCollect list called Miles Morales. And then everything under there obviously are Miles Morales Spider-Man. You might have Ultimate Fallout. You may have covers that feature Miles, and you may organize it in that way. And then you understand, okay, anything related to Miles that I may want to grade down the line or sell at a profit, I can then utilize that. The only thing I would argue there is that has the potential to grow over 500 issues if you just have a list called Miles. The nice thing is that the short box is self-contained. It's specific and limited to 150 to 200-ish issues of comics, so that you know it's really never going to get over that 500. If you're dealing with the long box, you could maybe still stay under that 500 count limit. So this is how I curate and organize my books digitally using GoCollect and leveraging this value report. It's super, super helpful. A lot of times you'll see books with no fair market value. That's okay. You understand this is a newer book, or maybe it's a book that you would want to go ahead and put in your own dollar bin. And then obviously you're scanning this for something like this, where you've got the potential for some profit or some value there if you're slabbing a book. And with so many books in our collection, it's hard to keep track of which books have value on the market. And so this is a great way to look at that and quickly scan and find. And then you can simply select all, copy, and paste it right into Excel or Google Sheets or another spreadsheet. And then you can start to work on this data and sort those columns and pinpoint exactly those books that you want to send in, instead of just eyeballing the fair market value. So a really great tool here is making use of this value report. Keep your list organized, keep them under 500, so that you don't have that issue that I have where it was just warning me, hey, you have too many comic books. I know that I know that to be true. Thank you, GoCollect, for reminding me, but this is my workaround, is to be able to go in here and then actually start selecting these and then moving them to the correct bin. Let me know if this is helpful, if it makes sense. Do you use GoCollect, or do you have any other tips or tricks for me on how to digitally organize your comics? You can leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, happy collecting, and see you next time.